welcome back to another episode of Stripped by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am your host, Steph Sia, aka Kimchi on stage. You know, I'm going to actually probably just stop saying that. I don't really know when I'll be dancing next, and I think I'm probably on my way out pretty soon. So you can find me online, actually. I stream exclusively on Streamate. I am there under Sia on Camera. That is my handle there. And also you can find me on other wonderful adult subscription platforms as well under the same handle. And I have been a sex worker for over a decade now, starting off as a sugar baby back in my humbling days. Oh my God, the sugar baby days. And you know, guys, I will do an episode on sugar babying and being a sugar baby, the whole sugar land. I'm just very defensive about that topic, and maybe I'll just do a solo episode next. I have many thoughts and feelings about that whole corner of the industry. But if you are just listening for the first time, this show is all about destigmatizing sex work. So I do that by bringing different guests onto the show every single week, talking about their respective corners of the industry. And this is not just about models. It's not just about, big porn stars. Sure, that's definitely a part of it. But we do bring on different guests in terms of like nonprofit organizations that help benefit sex workers. We also bring on people that are on their corporate level as well at some of your favorite adult companies. Just to really provide a transparent approach to the adult industry, all aspects of it, challenges and issues that we might be facing that, people at the mainstream level probably don't realize or understand. So I really do this to kind of attempt to educate and humanize sex workers and the adult industry as much as I can. So that's what the show is all about. Lots of episodes, huge catalog, over 200 episodes. So feel free to listen in if you have a lot of time, or maybe you're on a fancy road trip right now. Like a lot of you guys, I feel like a lot of people are like, I've been like binge listening to you for the past like 6 hours. I'm like, good for you, girl. I love to hear that. But this week is no different. We are bringing another expert onto the show, which we will get into shortly. But I just want to say hello to all the Patreon subscribers, those who are up in the third tier. You guys get a wonderful fan recognition shout out. So I just want to say hello really quickly to Miss Snoo all the way from Germany. We've got Geyser, Eric Arajo. We've got Via York from Seattle, McKenna King from Edmonton, Red Door Products from Seattle, Washington, Dale Flood from Vancouver, BC, Raina all the way from Sweden. I didn't know my podcast reached over there, but hello. That's super awesome. And I love to hear that as well. Thank you guys for subscribing. There are many of you that are also in the first and second tier as well. Thank you again for your support over the past few years. Members and patrons get some really great video exclusive access, lots of bonus content that's on there. You get all of the episodes I'm recording right now, all of the full episodes way ahead of everyone else, as well as the exclusive video content. So feel free to check it out. It's patreon.com/strippedbysia with tiers starting as low as $4 a month. So feel free to click around. That basically all goes to my website hosting, because costs, and everything costs something in this capitalistic world that we live in. Yes, every day. But I'm really stoked to finally get into the meat and bones of the episode today. We're going to be talking about a number of things today, but our guest is joining us, I think all the way from the East Coast in New York City. We have Ramona Flour joining us today. If you don't know who that is, I will tell you all the things I might know about her from what I found on the internet, which is she was a sex worker for over a decade. I believe still might be doing some stuff. She's also the current COO of SinParty.com, which we will definitely be talking about later today, which is a live camming platform. She was also working in corporate adult as well. Worked at Chatterbait for quite some time. I will also hear about that story today because it all ties in together. And I think that is all the things I could find / the information you provided me, Ramona. But yes. Yeah, I mean, I'm super stoked to have you on, and also just for myself and also the audience to learn more about you, I mean, specifically, yes, we will be talking about Sin Party today, but also talking about what I like to say adult corporate responsibility, or maybe the lack thereof of corporate responsibility in terms. I'm seeing some smiles and nods. Yes, we'll be talking about those topics today on today's show, and talking about, maybe perhaps lack of representation for sex workers that are in these executive roles, maybe lack of sex work consultation, all those things which are really, really important to talk about. But before we kind of dive into that, Ramona, I'd love to throw it back to you. Again, I found all the stuff on the internet / digging through the emails with our correspondence. But I would love to hear from you and flip it back to you and describe yourself to the audience in your own words and terms.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I always like to start just kind of explaining how I got into it, because I feel like, I don't know, when you threw it back to sugar babying, it just kind of reminded me of the amount of people that I know that get into this out of necessity and then come out of it like feeling very empowered and having lots of, mainstream crossover or success or, abundance is really interesting, because it was a 360 for me. I started in the industry in my early 20s. I was a hairstylist. I was working like 6 days a week, and I had this like beautiful client who would come in and she'd get her hair done, and she was going to Yale at the time. She was writing her dissertation for like psychology or sociology, and she was paying for school by stripping and camming. And one day she came in and she was like, "You're like too pretty to work this hard." Because like I would literally be like disheveled, like a hot mess every time she would see me. And like I think finally she like mustered it up to be like, "You work too hard, like you're a little too pretty. Like I have a proposition for you." And it's funny because in my day-to-day life, like I'll find myself having that moment out in the wild where I see like a beautiful person and I'm just like, I wonder, like you just have that moment. I try to be respectful. But she originally got me into camming. Like she showed me my first cam site. She kind of set me up with my account. I think we streamed together like 1 or 2 times, and I made like the same amount of money on the live stream that I made in tips at my salon for a week. And I was just like, you know what? Like, I was always kind of taught like work smarter, not harder, go after the path of least resistance. Like that's how you kind of get into your flow state and find what works for you. So I kind of took a deep dive. And funny enough, I was working at a salon and I was like getting into camming. I was like camming part-time at night. I had my clientele. I was kind of living a double life at that point in time. No one really knew what I was up to, except maybe like a few people in my like immediate circle. And my ex-boyfriend at the time like found me on a cam site and started like telling people in the town that I was living in New England, because it was like the hottest goss there is in this small town. And he was friends with my old salon owner's husband. They like were in a tattoo community together. So my old salon boss kind of pulled a, this isn't that kind of a place. I don't think that you're a good fit for this kind of a salon vibe. And I had worked for her for like 2 years at that time. And it was really funny because it was like, that salon and that group of people were definitely like counterculture people. They were like, they were going to like punk shows and they were all covered in tattoos and they were all into like skateboarding and graffiti and that kind of stuff. So I felt like I was going to be safe. I felt like those people, if any of the people in New England were going to be sex positive, it would be that community. And unfortunately, I learned that the stigma kind of around this work, it transcends through every community, every age group, every, social class, every political party. Like there's, if you plot me anywhere in the world, there's going to be someone that's like, I don't like what she's doing. So that was like a really interesting kind of moment for me. And I had to make the decision, like, do I want to keep living a double life? do I want to go lie at another salon and to my clients, or do I just want to own it? And at that point in time, I was like, let's just dive in. Let's see how successful we can be, how much money we can make, how far this can go. And it kind of opens me up to doing a lot of the trade shows in the industry, the Exotica, ABN. I think Expos was like just starting to do events at that time. And, looking back, it's just like so funny how I was like, at that moment where I was really questioning everything, and I ultimately chose adult because I just thought, even with all the stigma and all the barriers, that it was going to be the most lucrative, and I would have like the most rewarding lifestyle. Because I was sick of working that much at that point.
Totally. And I'm actually glad that you talked about that too, because I feel, and there's so many listeners that have, a lot of people are doing this full time. A lot of these people are still moonlighting as well, or have like, very much into the gig economy and trying to play that balancing act. So it's really comforting to hear that too, but also, I mean, first of all, I'm sorry that that happened to you because that's really shitty for that to happen, especially when you thought like this might be a safe haven, this might be okay. But as you mentioned, the stigma is really, really real, and that's just like from the outside looking in for those who are not even in our industry. Yeah, perhaps we're going to get into talking about within the industry internally as well, because that's also, I mean, we can't really miss talking about that because it's so apparent, but we'll definitely dive into that bit later on. But I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your humble beginnings because, like, I mean, perhaps maybe it was a good thing that, that person knew the hair salon's owner and, everything
Yeah.
happens for a reason.
Yeah, I think so. I'm one of those people that think that like even in hardship, like even when we're having a bad experience, there's always an opportunity to learn from it, and there was a lesson in that, and I think that it made me sort of value um, I always had a strong work ethic, but it made me want to work for myself, and it made me want to have more control of my life and create a lifestyle where a boss couldn't mess it up for me, or an ex-boyfriend or whomever couldn't like mess with me in that way. And it sort of created a space where that I could insulate myself and kind of really dive into our community here, which I love.
Totally, totally. Because I mean, what that person did was actually not even legal. You can actually fight that too, as well. But like that can also take a lot of effort and stuff as well. But I mean, talking about, and I know you mentioned this in emails if you want to quickly talk about it too. But also, I think you're also mentioning too that you mentioned this is generational work because I think your mom is also heavily involved with the labor rights movement, but also talking about like sex worker rights and advocacy as well. Do you want to chat about that a little bit too, and perhaps it might be looped into some of our conversation today as well?
Yeah, no, no, I definitely will. So to start, I grew up with my mom being a full service worker. She also owned agencies when I was a kid, growing up in Florida, and she also was like involved in like a lot of underworld dealings, organized crime. Her father was mobbed up. The story that I got was that my grandfather was kind of a knucklehead, and he got in trouble back in the day. And it was like pretty common because they were like trying to not draft people for the military in the United States. So like if you would get in trouble and you'd go in front of a judge and you were a young kid, they would be like, you can join the military or you can go to jail. So my grandfather was like, I'm going to join the military. I'm scared. And they sent him to Korea, and he was
Wow.
like historically very civilly disobedient and just like not an agreeable person. So I think that he was like a cook during the war. Like they couldn't use him for anything else. And he came back, and the funny thing was then he was like friends with all of the like vets and all of the like law enforcement in the town, because he like came back and he had served with all of them. It was like a dry county outside of Boston, Massachusetts. So he built like a wet bar in their basement, and he started running illegal card games. He owned
Wow.
a newspaper stand, like a bodega corner store. off of the train line, and he would sell pornography, which like in the 70s was illegal. I have some like newspaper articles about him getting arrested and fined because like, a state trooper would come in and see like a dirty magazine and be like, oh, this is a crime, and come back with a warrant. So they would like, shake him down, take all of his porn magazines, fine him, and then he would just like keep doing it. So he did that his whole life. I think that like my mom found inspiration in that growing up. It's definitely a cultural thing. um, so like my mom got involved in that kind of work like pretty early on and was like an entrepreneur and like a mover and a shaker. I remember like she would come over to like my grandparents' house when I was a kid and have like lots of money, and she would always have like sugar daddies. Like she dated a one of her sugar daddies back in the day that I remember when I was really, really little. He was like a big motorcycle guy, but he was like a celebrity jeweler. So he like made jewelry for like Elizabeth Taylor. So she'd always have like
Wow.
new jewelry. She would always be gifting things to people in the family. She was kind of like that person. And I just remember like how my mom sort of used her position and her success in like kind of how we see like old money. Like she was very like philanthropic with our family. She really did pull a lot of my family members out of generational poverty. She took care of all of her brothers and sisters, my grandparents, my great grandmother. She helped pay for my cousin's college, like all that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, a lot of that work in under the underbelly of work, organized crime, comes, legality issues, and she was incarcerated for a long time as a result of it. A lot of the things that she acquired due to the work, like, were taken in asset forfeiture, which is like common here. If you own a house and you go to jail, they take it from you, that kind of thing. So, but she was always like my biggest inspiration growing up. My mom is like burned her life to the ground multiple times and just like gets back up, shakes it off, and just has like a level of courage and bravery and tenacity that like if I had half of it, I would be happy. So I really admire her. And in 2009, she got into activism and advocacy work. She started like small in New England, doing like grassroots organizing, coalition building. She started doing a lot of like labor education because she was really fascinated with the labor rights issue of the work, and the exploitation of this labor, and how bad actors and bad parties will come in because of the ability to exploit or take advantage of the lack of regulation or the sort of gray markets that exist in this work. So when she got involved in that, it sort of inspired me, and I was just getting. I think I just got my first iPhone. I had just gotten Instagram. I wasn't even camming yet. I was still in a salon. And little by little, I sort of realized, like, there's no shame in this. I think as women, like, I was going to be sexualized, um, like it or not, from a large majority of the people that I was interacting with. And I sort of, at a very young age, realized I might as well make some money off of it, and I might as well take that into my control and have some autonomy in that. And I think my mom's abilities to set that example and set boundaries and sort of, be like like she was like the original girl boss in my world. So that really helped me like set the tone for my career and like what I was going to do with the work and, the community, and it helped me get involved in advocacy and activism as well.
Wow, that is so inspiring. Even for me, just hearing that story, that's so nice to hear because, like, I just consider yourself like super lucky to be in that position to have, you know, parents, well, your mom, and then also your grandfather too. Like, that's super cool history, but also just to have that support system. Um, in such an isolating, or what can be a very isolating industry. Very, very comforting to hear that, and just love the work that she's continuing to do. So I'm like, oh, applaud. I want to find out the name of these organizations later after a conversation. But I mean, given this inspiration, I feel like that's definitely taken you've definitely taken some of that guidance from your mom, because you obviously started Sin Party. But I feel like before we start talking about Sin Party and your entrepreneurialism, talk to us maybe about your career in corporate adults, because that's also a big part of your journey, your story, and I'm sure has had some stepping stones in terms of experience to get you to where you are with Sin Party. So maybe we'll start talking about that and maybe your chapter with Chatterbait.
Yeah, so I got involved in Chatterbait in 2011. It was my main home base preferred cam platform. I had my most success and I made my most money as far as live streaming on that platform. And I was camming for like, I would say about 4 or 5 years total. But I started doing a lot of the trade shows. I originally met my former boss and she started inviting me to trade shows and we started working together, traveling. We just established a good foundational working relationship. And I think that those were sort of the moments that she saw, like, okay, like I could trust this person to manage the social or do event planning, or this person has the emotional intelligence to deal with the talent one on one, which is like another huge, I think, a huge thing that is lacking in corporate adult. So a lot of those transferable skills were sort of, clocked initially, and I sort of started. I've just always been the person that I'm just going to I'm just going to keep asking and seeing. I'm going to keep offering and seeing if I can get the answer that I'm trying to get. But it really started with like those freelance one-off events and projects, and I think a little bit of consulting, some work where I did like I was paid ideation fees for my ideas. It was like very small, and I think that over time we just had a good working relationship and we trust builded, and we got ourselves to the place um, that I got hired full time to be an executive assistant there. And I think the other thing too is that like in tech startup world, where Chatterbait was in 2011 versus when I got hired in 2015 is it's an insane amount of growth. Like I always call myself like a tech startup survivor because like it is like you're like shell shocked after working one of those jobs. I have so many friends like in tech and in advertising in New York, so I like hear horror stories all the time from like really big companies, as well, like more mainstream company like tech companies as well. And so I started working as an executive assistant, and more got piled onto me as far as like as my skills grew and the resources, and I think the demand of the company grew. Like where I started in 2015 with that company versus when I left in 2019 was just like completely insane. We went from having like 50 people show up at our events to having like 250 people show up. So the growth was insane. And even since COVID, since I've left, it's wild to watch it pop off even further. Um, but so that was kind of it. And, over time I would do more. I would ask a lot of questions. I was really lucky to work with like a lot of really competent support staff. Like my colleagues were really helpful. I have to say that like they all knew I had the background of coming in as a cam model and working in adult. So I was kind of like the only one in the company without experience. And they were all really sympathetic and really respectful and really kind and welcoming, and, taught me a lot and let me grow. And I really appreciated that. And ultimately, my position from camming into sort of a support staff role really helped me inform my day to day as far as dealing with our talent. And it was really, really nice, like to be able to, I think that you can have sympathy without empathy, but I think empathy is like really understanding where someone's coming from. And sometimes you don't really understand it. It's like above your pay grade. It's just not something that you can relate to in that way unless you've been there. And I think that I was able to have a really big impact and really help a lot of people in that situation because I knew what it had been like to be in those positions, and I tried to rely on that lived experience and that sort of emotional intelligence to guide me and, try to be like a human hand reaching across the metaverse or like a huge corporate company, like, and really trying to make people feel seen and appreciated and um, to feel safe and secure if they were going to come to a show. Like I took that role very serious as far as like house momming, I guess, at the trade shows.
Yeah.
Like I never lost a chicken on all the years that I was doing that work. So that
Wow.
was really cool, and it opened me up to a lot of people and a lot of travel and a lot of different things as a result.
No, totally. Yeah. And it exposes you to so many different, I guess, almost even like cross training opportunities where you can really hone in on your skill set or even build on your skill set or even just open up your doors to something completely brand new, all which is a super, super valuable, especially when you're wanting to start, like start up your own startup, which we'll be talking about shortly. But going back to your experience with Chatterbait and also just talking about having that lived experience. That is so nice to hear that because you mentioned that like, you might have been the only person there that has had that lived experience as a sex worker, which is like so ironic because I mean, it's a huge, huge company, and this is not. I'm not just singling out Chatterbait, but this is honestly across the board. I hear this oftentimes. But the lack of representation and having that empathy and that ability to be like, I have literally experienced what this model has been experienced or has been experiencing. Can we talk about that point specifically in terms of like how important it is to actually have someone on your team or many people on your team that has been in this line of work? I would love to hear your thoughts and feelings about that.
I mean, I really think that it comes down to sort of creating this insulation. And I think that if you can set up a company in corporate work and you can insulate yourselves from all of the variables and mitigate risk, that is like corporate 101, like the best way to structure a company. But I think the issue that happens is you are so removed from your user base or your revenue base that you get lost in the sauce, and you see it with people hiring consultants. You see it with people hiring experts and academics to sort of inform them of whatever industry that they're operating in. And I think also it just comes down to like liability of care. Like if people care too much, it can sort of be an issue. And I think that there's a way to sort of, instead of holding any like rage or fear or big heavy feelings around this work in contempt and feeling like it's a threat, I think you have to put someone in that position that has done the emotional work, the spiritual work, the psychological work, so sort of alchemize that and be in a position where it's not, those big feelings aren't a threat, they're actually a superpower. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that took me a long time. This is a whole journey of like not caring enough but not caring too much, because if you care too much, you're just like carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, and you get burned out and you get empathy fatigue and you get to a place where you're just so desensitized, I think. I will say that I feel like a lot of the situations in corporate adult, it's strategic. I think it's easier for them to sort of ice workers themselves out and hire outside of, typically in corporate companies, you see internal hiring, or you see recruiters that are operating within the industry, recruiting people specifically for their roles. In adult, you don't really see that. I think there's only one or two other companies that I can think of that have current or former workers in C-suite roles, and it's like, I mean, I can also speculate how much of that is performative. As far as like, I don't want to be like a pawn or a wheel in the cog. I really want to have meaningful change and have like the tools and the resources to be able to do the things that I want to do. And I feel really grateful at Sin Party that I've been empowered to do that. Like when I first started getting involved, it was sort of a conversation around like I get to hire my own team and I get to strategize and I get to do a lot of the community building and organizational things that I want to do and incorporate sex workers into that. So like my second hire was a former worker who's now our shooter, and they're great. It's like if you can shoot porn and exist in that world, then like you're more than qualified to take pretty girl photos or do digital marketing materials. And those are like things that I've tried to bring in as far as like initiatives to really center that core value of like being sex worker led. And I think that's really important. And I will say that like, you know, there's no excuse for it. My hope is that being in this role and being in this position sort of by example or maybe lack thereof forces other corporate companies to sort of look around and realize that it's lacking and sort of answer for that very strategic um, implementation in their companies that they've set to have. And I think that, you know, obviously the talent base can, you know, they can vote with their dollar and they can join platforms and utilize platforms that are sex worker led or feel diverse or have inclusion campaigns to protect them and make them feel more welcome and hopefully enrich their experiences. And they can boycott the platforms that don't do those things. And I think it's as simple as that. I think at the end of the day, the relationship between talent and their user base, their fans, is a business to business relationship. And I feel like the average sex worker has more executive presence and more command and more better negotiation skills and better business to business skills than a lot of people doing this work, you know, 10, 20 years in the bag. And at the end of the day, they all have very similar lifestyles. Like if you want to work on a C-suite, if you want to be an entrepreneur, it's not a 9 to 5, it's a 24/7 gig. There's no turning it off and being like, we're closing shop for the day. And so I think those are all things that sort of prove that workers themselves would be good in those positions. Many of my colleagues over the years are extremely well educated, have worked in Fortune 500 companies, have had success outside of this work in mainstream work in all different, you know, all different institutions, all different industries. So they have the experience elsewhere as well. They're just sort of iced out because of their um, proximity to the work itself. And I think that comes down to that level of stigma. Like you can profit off of this work and make a good amount of money, sometimes even an obscene amount of money, running one of these companies, but you don't actually have to deal with the day-to-day stigma or the discrimination or the deplatforming or the violence that a lot of the workers and the laborers themselves do. And I think that that is, you know, really an issue. I think as an industry, like many industries, that we have to sort of address and keep in the forefront of our minds. And I think that that comes down to, you know, class consciousness and, you know, how we want to navigate and how we want to, you know, show up for ourselves and our communities. And I think we're seeing that with, you know, where people choose to make their, you know, their platforms of choice and where they choose to make their money more and more.
So many nuggets here, Ramona. I'm like trying to see where I should dive in first. No, so many great points there. I love that. I mean, first of all, and maybe this will kind of go into the next topic too, but talking about uh, the wide range of skill sets that sex workers have. As you mentioned, you know, I feel like a lot of us do have a lot of great training for a lot of, you know, quote unquote, like normal civvy jobs or like corporate jobs because, or even entrepreneurialism, as you mentioned, because a lot of our jobs, at least in the online world, it is 24/7 and you don't get to turn off. And some, you know, some people do, some people don't have that option as well. But it really provides good training for these other roles, because some questions that I get a lot of, and a hot topic would be like, oh, what am I supposed to do when the day comes when I'm going to leave this industry? And I'm just so flabbergasted that they're not thinking about all these transferable skills that you have acquired working 10 plus years in the industry. The editing, the copy, the marketing, the advertising, sales, like everything is applicable, and it means something. So I applaud that. And also you do make some really good points there too, to say that like these are good skills that you can really, really hone in on. And I know a lot of people listening are also just want to hear some backup points and like validation and stuff like that. But I'm also curious too, and maybe on your thoughts in terms of like, you were talking about working in corporate adult, and for those who don't have lived experience in it, working in the adult industry, but then not having to wear or carry that weight of stigma that a lot of us do have, unfortunately. Or maybe it can be seen as like, oh, I work for that porn company and it's like a cool job, and they're like a developer or something. I'm wondering, are you curious to see if there will be, or if there will be a trend for sex workers who are wanting to exit the industry and trying to find jobs specifically in the adult sphere? Is that something that you might have heard of, or something that you have actively chosen to do? Or I'm just curious about this.
Yeah, I think that there's like a history of it, and you see it with a lot of like porn actresses that retire and go on to do production work or directing and stuff like that. A lot of people that get involved in content creation go on to, I know so many workers themselves that self-shot and did streaming for years and years, and now they own photography or videography companies. They're like shooting people's weddings and stuff, which I just think is like full circle, so funny. I love it. And then I know so many workers that have retired from all different types of sex work and have gone on to do sales, real estate, medical devices, aerospace, like the wildest stuff. If you put a persuasive hottie in that position, they're going to excel in it, because like that, they're literally the people that are recruited for those positions, believe it or not. I've literally never met someone that sells medical devices, by the way, that is not like a 5'10", like beautiful, like exceedingly beautiful, like blonde woman. I've just like never, maybe they're out there, but I don't think doctors are buying medical devices from anyone that isn't that, which I think is really interesting. But yeah, so I think that, and I think that like, I always want people to think bigger. You can set your focus on sort of pivoting or shifting within adult, but you have these skills that are very similar. Like at the root of this, we're talking about care work and we're talking about entertainment. So if you wanted to breach into the mainstream and cross over into fashion or beauty or entertainment, film, commercial work, all that kind of stuff, you could do that. And I think that there are little alcoves in those worlds, in those spaces, where there are people that are allies, that are former workers. Maybe they're not willing to disclose that because of their profession, but I've met so many people. I've gotten myself to so many tables and had very close-lip conversations with people where they're like, I don't tell people this, but I trust you and I know like what this is what you're doing. And then they start spilling the beans and telling me about how they were a sugar baby, or how they stripped through college, or this or that. And literally, I got a divorce and I paid my mortgage and fed my children because of this work. And like, no one knows, but like, I have respect for the people doing it. Like, I'll hear those renditions of those stories from people that you would never expect it from. So I think like, don't I want people to not sort of box themselves in. Like, sure, adult is a great ecosystem to exist in, but like there are opportunities to cross over and reach into the mainstream. I think you just have to be courageous and brave. And I think that you have to, unfortunately, there's going to be rejection, and there's going to be people that, like, don't, they assess the risk of dealing with someone that has had a lifestyle or a professional background in adult work. But I think that there are people that are going to be really supportive and allies to people, and they're going to see that those transferable skills and that emotional intelligence and that, like, frankly, the bravery that it takes to like hop on a pole naked or twerk on a live stream, like, in your laundry or whatever, for like tens of thousands of people. And I think that we're going to see more and more of that. Like, we've sort of, little by little, I think the digital wave of adult work has sort of, as much as big tech wants to make it seem like it's, we're censoring things and age verification, all this, I think that it's become more commonplace, and I think that we see it a lot more. In 2011, when I would tell people I'm a cam girl, they would not know what I'm talking about. I would have to tell people the name of the site and like explain it to them. And now I tell people like about my former company, and they're like, "Oh no, I've heard of it," because like 75% of the population has been on a campsite. 90% of the population in a survey recently said that they admitted to watching porn. So like they're all doing it. Like,
Yeah.
So
More mainstream now.
yeah. So I think that that's like I hope is a takeaway from this, that like you can dream big, and like there are going to be opportunities, and you're going to find allies outside of the work. And I think that that's what in activism we talk about: coalition building and collective bargaining, finding people with the same sort of struggles that align with yours, and collectively bargaining and coalition building with them, so that you have that community base of people outside of your industry or outside of your community to do good work with. I think that in professional settings, networking is so important as well. So, just don't set your sights on networking within adult, set your sights on networking outside of adult, and find people that are like-minded and agreeable and want to put you on or put you in those positions, because they're out there. And people that have done this work before, former workers, get hired in other industries and other jobs every single day. It's just, we don't hear about it as much.
No, we definitely don't hear about it as much. But you were talking about dreaming big. I'm also wanting to pivot the conversation to Sin Party. I know we've touched on it throughout the episode. I'm like, okay, it's probably time that we actually talk about what Sin Party is. But maybe let's start at the top, and we'll kind of go into different branches there. But let's start off with what exactly is Sin Party.
Yeah, so Sin Party is an adult super site. We just launched our live feature, so live webcams. You can host your own chat room. It's adult friendly, so we're not censoring you. You can, unfortunately, because of like age verification laws and the legislation that has come down, as far as credit card processing, we are limited to certain things. But generally speaking, it's like a no holds bar place for you to be an adult and do whatever adults do in the dark corners of the world. And you can make some money doing it. I will say the subscription and content sales part of the site has existed. It predates when I joined the company. I joined the company at the beginning of this year. My founder is a technical founder, meaning he literally has a background in tech and creating things. And we have venture capital backing us, so we have a lot of opportunity to do things a little bit different. In adult, typically the big dogs that you hear about, the big companies, are all private equity. So they're all created. The founder and the original people that start the company, the startup like people, they're doing it with their own money. So it's very, very rare that you see companies that have venture capital injected in them, and that's because of stigma. That's because of like none of these companies can be publicly traded. There's like so many kind of risks involved when you're sort of injecting money into different companies. We're really fortunate that we have partners that have given us the dough to make this happen and to believe in us. I work with many of my colleagues from my former project as well, which is really cool. So people that have been involved in community building or traffic purchasing or affiliates or artificial intelligence or customer service, all those types of things. We all have experience in those things, and we're coming together to work on this project. And it feels really cool. My founder is, from South Africa, and our team is spread out all over the world. So it feels very global, and it's been fun to work on a project that, originally, when I got involved, they were like, we need a sex worker. We know we need someone that is akin to understanding the needs of the talent base. And, I think that I could sit here and I could rattle off that we have the highest payouts, or that we have the most experienced traffic buyers, or that we have venture capital, or that we have like the best tech, and we have dynamic code, and we have custom negotiation forms. I could go on and on and on. I think the difference, frankly, is that they put me in the game, and that they put a worker, and they were proud to do it. They were happy to do it. I think that sets the tone. I think whoever's at the top sets the tone for the company. And I'm hoping that my positioning in the industry can hopefully make people feel comfortable and safe. I just want to make a space that feels more comfortable, more safe, and give everybody an opportunity to earn more and have more autonomy and feel like their voice matters. We're a startup, so the cool thing is like, I've been literally doing so many calls. I'll tell people, like, if you're having an issue on whatever site that you're working on and you're ready to smash your laptop over your desk, I want you to email me. I want you to text me. I want you to DM me and tell me, Ramona, this is literally driving me insane. I have to deal with this problem every single day. Whether it's like there's no internal messaging system, or there's no internal promotion system, or there's an issue with like a basic function, anything that's like driving you insane, like whatever those pain points are, I can take that back to my developers and we can fix your problem. Like it can be a build your own adventure. And that feels really cool. And it's been really fun to work with people that I've worked on former projects with, because they'll be like, oh, I don't like this about this. And they'll give me the critical feedback, and then they'll literally come back the next time and be like, oh, you fixed it, or you changed it. Like in real time, they're noticing those adaptations and those innovations. And I think that unfortunately a lot of the bigger companies, like they sort of get established, they start making money, and it becomes this like money printing machine, and they're like, okay, like if it's not broke, don't fix it. And they stop innovating, and they stop trying to be more dynamic, and they stop trying to do anything that could be helpful to the talent. The amount of talent that I talk to, I interview people all the time, and they'll tell me straight up, like when I ask them, like, what's going on? Like, what is your problem? What do you want? Like, what do you think about this? They're literally like, no one's ever asked me that. I've had people that have been doing online work for 10 years, came in for 10 years, and they're like, no one's ever asked me that. Like, they're taken back. Like, they're literally beside themselves by it. So that feels really cool to be in a position where I can do that, and I'm hopeful that we can build something, that's going to revolutionize the industry. I think me being in this position sort of makes other companies answer for the fact that they don't have people like me in their C-suites, and I think that it makes them, have to sort of look at some of their own lack of innovation, and their payouts, or all of those different things. I think that ultimately, I want to try to revolutionize the industry and create a platform that's not like anything else. I do a lot of like R&D for our company, and it's funny to see our competitors or whatever, but frankly, what they're doing doesn't matter because like we're not even trying to be like them. Like we're trying to be something different. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Smart.
been fun to do that, and it's been fun to, ask the talent base who drives the revenue, the literally the most important people in this equation. Like, what do they want? What are they struggling with? Like, how do we fix things for them? How do we advocate for them? How do we build something more sustainable? And how do we build a platform that isn't just a little website you log on to, but it has a robust, culture and community. And I have already built an online community elsewhere through my old company, and I'm
Yeah.
going to do it again.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. I love to hear this, Rona. This is amazing. And I'm so happy to hear that. Like it just sounds so inspiring and also just like gives people hope, hopefully. I mean, that's what I'm getting. It's very uplifting, very empowering, which is really nice. Because you don't really get to hear this from executive folk at large companies. And I have brought on some corporate people from specific companies before. Um, and it's been interesting. It's been an interesting bag, I will say, in terms of feedback, because for those who have been on those sites, I get like a lot of like model and creator feedback to be like, do they really care, or is it just something, as you might have mentioned earlier in the show too? Is it just a performative thing? Is it just something that you say that you're going to do, or it's just kind of glossed over and not much is put into it. So I really think that getting performer feedback, getting creator, like people that are actually doing this work, getting and asking what their feedback is and what their opinions are is so important to making any site run better. And it's a win-win all around, in my opinion. So many times that we have issues and lots of challenges. I would say that like sometimes you just get the runaround when you are asking the question, or when you're asking, hey, like, why is this an issue? Why has this been an issue for the past like 5 months? Like, why hasn't it been fixed yet? It's really refreshing to hear that like your team at Sin Party is really trying to, do the best that they can do and be the best that they can be, because it is a competitive world out there, especially in adult. You were talking about Sin Party being like a super site. I don't know if you want to maybe go over some of the features too, in case folks who are listening are interested in checking it out as well. I mean, hopefully they are. That's why you're also here as well. But I'd love to hear some of the features.
I think the draw to like the freemium live cam model is essentially that regardless of what you're doing, what kind of work you're doing, if you log on, you can sort of funnel market there. So we're seeing on social media this sort of like hostile sort of censorship of and restriction of adult content and commercial work. And I think that the takeaway that I always get from that is like, don't focus so much on Instagram or a platform that you can't control. Focus on things that you own, and being able to go on Sin Party and make an account and try to implement going live a few times a week into your routine is going to help you funnel market and drive traffic from us. So like we're investing money. We have the infrastructure to funnel traffic through our site. So if you go and sit there, if you want to sell a subscription, if you want to sell your content, if you want to sell pole dances, if you want to sit there and be, what I consider like a personality entertainer, which we're seeing the rise on sites like Twitch and Kick, and even like IG Live, although those platforms are not really adult friendly and they sort of like shadow restrict you and they sort of suppress that kind of content, or they frankly just delete people. You could go on a site that's like not just tolerating you, but celebrating you and welcoming you. We actually had a really funny conversation months ago because we were having a conversation about like, do we want to say led by a sex worker, or is that going to alienate the average sort of influencer personality streamer? And I sort of prefaced it as like, spaces that tolerate like sex workers are far and few between, and spaces that accept and tolerate influencers are a lot more abundant. So we're not saying that we don't want influencers or personality streamers or non-nude people or people that are not doing explicit work. We're just saying that this is a place that we're going to celebrate people that are doing that work, and everybody else is welcome as well. But we really wanted to sort of create a culture and environment internally that really celebrated people, not just tolerated people, not just profited off of their Instagram thought photos, but really accepted them and wanted to work with them.
Right.
So that feels really nice, and I think that that's a really big feature. I think live is the future. I talk a lot about digital hospitality and the attention economy. I think that our attention is the new currency in the world that we live in. I don't think that we're in competition with one another. I think we're in competition with how many hours in a day someone has and how much time they want to sit on their phone, and how much they want to give in that sort of relationship. And I think that technology and the acceleration of technology has really alienated a lot of people, really isolated a lot of people, really disconnected a lot of people. And I think that as we're more lonely than we've ever been, socially, culturally, and I think that this sort of economy that is established online, these platforms, is a direct result of it. Whether we like it or not, we're sort of all responsible for it. And I think that's there's no money like internet money. Why not sell your time and attention? And if you're a beautiful person, or have an interesting story, or you have a skill, or you like performance art, it's a really good opportunity for you to capitalize on it. This isn't there's been renditions of people doing this kind of work since the dawn of time. I think that it's just now online, and I think that at the end of the day, a beautiful woman's attention is sold at a premium, and that's nothing new. And that long after we're all gone, some beautiful woman will still be making her bag doing the same thing. So it's it is what it is, you guys.
Truth. So much truth. I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, talking the technology piece and kind of where technology is going. But I like that people's attention and time is currency. I hadn't really thought about that specific perspective. So with that perspective in mind, I guess that's something that you're really honing in on when it comes to Sin Party. Is that obviously a major feature? You said live is obviously going to be a huge thing. I think it's a great thing. I might be a bit biased because I am a cam model, but
yeah, no, I think it is. I think that there's a certain type of person, there's a time and a place for prepackaged content, but there's a difference between sitting at home and watching a movie and going to a play.
yeah,
Or
totally.
sitting at home and watching a movie versus sitting in a movie theater and experiencing a movie with people that you bring your friends or whatever, you bring your significant other, and then you have the opportunity to discuss the movie and digest it and sort of mull it over with somebody. I think that there's this rise of people wanting to consume content for sure, but I think a huge focus is live because it's that instantaneous, immediate back and forth. And that conversation, TikTok was originally 30-second videos, and now they've pivoted, and all of their monetization has been pushed to the live streams,
right?
And the affiliate marketing, which campsites were doing 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Totally.
So this is nothing new. It's just we're seeing different platforms understand that and capitalize on it. So I think that that's going to be the future, and I think we're seeing a huge abundance of telekinetic toys and devices come on the market as well. I think Lovin's is probably the most popular, but I see fuck machines. I see LED lights. I see these stream decks that are plugged in that completely interact with the live models. So people are tipping, and fog machines and bubble machines are going off, and music noises and lights are it's literally it's so much of that gamification of the attention, and it's so interesting to see sort of that coming coming in to even like the mainstream. Like I feel like I see like influencers and I see sort of that kind of um, decor even kind of going into like other corners of the internet, like even outside of live streaming. So I think that like that's on the rise, and we're gonna see more and more of it. And I don't know, the last time I pumped gas, there was literally like a LED screen that popped up, and it was like a live stream video of like a news anchor. So like literally like we're gonna have technology is gonna inundate us with all of this more and more and more. It's not gonna be like the iPhone in your hand or the laptop that you're like watching your favorite live streamer on. It's gonna be like there's gonna be an LED screen in everything in the next 10 to 20 years.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the future for sure. I mean, it's really interesting to see that, and also like in combination with like AI tools and also just like AI clones and VR and having those interactive toys and having that feel real and all that stuff too. I think all of that is part of this new technology, or not maybe not new technology, but maybe new technology now, but very current technology that I think can really enhance our industry for sure.
Yeah, like the accelerate. I swear, I feel like the adult industry is the real judge behind the acceleration of technology. I read a book by Samantha called How Sex Changed the Internet, and they were actually talking about how AVN started in January because they had the largest technology and consumers goods show, and a lot of the porn girls would go, and then they stopped, like they separated it. They didn't want the adult workers and like the porn girls going to the show, so AVN just started doing their porn convention at the same time as like the nerd tech convention because they like knew the guys were going to come down. So it's literally like I feel like that's such a good way to explain it as far as like an anecdotal story, like all of these things with AI, all of these things with robotics, all of these things with like telekinetic devices. I swear that's all inspired because like some horny nerd is like sitting somewhere and is like, oh, I know what I'm gonna make. Like it's very like Frankenstein. Like it's like I know what I'm gonna do with this. So I think we're gonna see more and more of it as a result.
Well, what's the name of that book again?
It's called How Sex Changed the Internet. It's by Sam Cole. She's an incredible writer and ally that has like done a lot of coverage on the adult industry as a whole, and is like very wise as far as like the tech and censorship and kind of activism intersecting with adult.
Very cool. I'm going to write that down and also add it to my reading list. So thank you for that. Ramona, it's pretty much our time here, but I just wanted to quickly ask you, was there anything else that you wanted to cover that we didn't cover today? It's just a really nice, refreshing conversation to hear about, the corporate side of adult, and also just obviously hearing about Sin Party as well. But I just wanted to ensure that we didn't miss anything on your end.
No, I really appreciate the time, and I hope that it kind of inspires people or informs people, and they can go out there and they can dream big and, take no shit. And I hope that I see more and more people trying to submit resumes and CVs and trying to get meetings and trying to get one-off work with some of these companies. I think that like if you are feeling dissuaded, just like keep trying, because you never know. One no might turn into a yes, and one yes is going to snowball into another yes and another yes and another yes. So like always be receptive to things, even if it feels small bones at the time. Things can like really snowball into something that you like. I never thought I would be sitting here, in my mid 30s at this point, but here we are. So, and that started with like a few yeses. So yeah, that's it.
So good. And I mean, and maybe this is a message out to any corporate people listening too in the side of adult. But yes, hire more sex workers. We really need more representation there.
And they're literally the best people. They are the hardest workers, the smartest people. I learn so much from sex workers every literally every single day. what the average like seasoned sex worker forgets in a day is something that a lot of these executives will never know in their lifetime. They can spend a ton of money doing research and development and surveys and pools and going to events and doing all this stuff, but if they don't actually put people into, bring those ideas to fruition, they're just not going to ever know. So I hope that they take the notes that we're offering.
Right? All good resources here. And before I let you go, Ramona, where can we all find you?
You can find me at Ramona Explains on Twitter and Instagram, and you can find me at sinparty.com. We're going to be doing some seminars. We're doing the last 2 Exoticas of the year in New Jersey and DC, so we'll be there for those. And we'll be doing some more digital campaigns in the coming weeks and stuff. We have our blog going, so I'm looking for workers that want to write articles for us on all topics relating to the industry. But yeah, reach out to me there.
Very cool. For everyone else that is listening at home, if you want to get in touch with myself, it's Stripped by Sia on Twitter, Stripped by Sia podcast on Instagram. We also have my Patreon, which is patreon.com/strippedbysia. And if you also want to get on the show, if you have a really cool idea that you want to pitch to me, it's strippedbysia.com. Click the contact button there. There's a form you can fill it out. I'm excited to read your pitches. Lots of people pitching, which I think is really cool. Keep at them. I really enjoy reading those, and hopefully maybe it'll be developed into an episode in the future. It's new episodes every single Sunday, dropping at midnight Pacific Standard Time. And if you are a Spotify or a Apple Podcast listener, you can go ahead and rate the show. We love 5 stars. It really helps people discover the show more. 5 stars if you can. And of course, I read all the reviews that you guys post on Apple and all the questions that you engage with on Spotify as well. So please do your homework if you enjoy free content like this. And we'll see you all in for another episode next Sunday. Thank you so much for joining us, Ramona.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're listening to Stripped by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia. Music by Ted D. Graphic design by Maria Bellandarama, and photography by Ian Dabrin.